Well, good day to you and welcome to Search for Signs. My name is Gary Willing. I hope wherever you are, whenever you're listening to this video, you're doing really well and having a great day. Now, if you are new to this channel, you have never heard me say this before, but if you've heard these videos before, I'm just reminding you to do it too if you haven't done it. But the best thing to do after listening to a video I put up is to do some research and see if it's true for you. I'm never expecting anyone to listen to what I have to say and take what I have to say on face value and believe it or whatever. So it's always best to do some research, just a little bit of research. See if it's true for you, get some better background information if that's the case. And it might be helpful to understand and to know that the first time I came across this information in a book by Benjamin Creme, I did not agree with any of it. And now look at me, I put up over 1,000 videos where I'm talking about just how true I think this information is. So it all came from me doing a little research, doing a little study, and looking into this information. So hopefully you'll check it out. We got links in the description portion of these videos to help in your research. Check out the Share International site. The link is at the very top. You want to come back and join the discussion? That's all great, fine, and wonderful. Post a comment. Let me know what you think. Ask a question by posting your question in the comment section. I'll try to I'll try to answer that question in the next video. Or you can email me the question or let me know what you want to talk about in relation to this information by emailing me, searchforsigns@mail.com. All right, so I wanted to dive right into the video and try to address a couple comments, and then answer a question. How about that? So this first one I want to talk about is coming from NAWFELTP. It says, "Hey man, I was doing research for a sign in Islam called the Antichrist, and my research wasn't exclusively around Islam. I've searched in 4 different religions and went back to the history with the ancient civilizations also, and the amount of things I found shocked me. It's almost like someone was there trying to change the scriptures for his own benefit. It's scary and I'm still into my research. But the most shocking is I've never known someone called Maitreya until last week. And my research suddenly took me to your video. Good job, man. Keep the work up." A little fire emoji. Well, thank you very much. You know, it's funny. I listened to this video where Barack Obama was talking about this time when he was running for president. And he was about to give a talk in South Carolina, of all places, which is my home state. And it was raining. He wasn't feeling very well. And he was about to start. And this woman in the back just said, "Fire it up. Let's go." She kept saying that. Eventually, other people started to say it. And then Barack Obama said, "I started to get kind of fired up. I started to feel like I needed to go." So a little fire emoji, get me all fired up. I appreciate it. Now, I wanted to talk about something in relation to what you're saying. Okay, so it has to do with the Antichrist. And I talk about this from time to time because, of course, people hear me talk about Maitreya, talk about the priorities of the teacher and so forth, and it's perhaps different than what they're thinking the teacher will come back as, even though we're expecting this teacher and waiting for the teacher to come back just as I am. But it's different than what they're expecting. So they're thinking that he might be the Antichrist, or a lot of them are actually convinced that he's the Antichrist, and I'm somehow duped or delusional or party in crime to the fact that he is the Antichrist, right? And I knew it all along and that kind of stuff. But what I wanted to say is, and it's worth repeating because we need to kind of look at this like this, is that people are, of course, looking for the Antichrist. They're expecting the Antichrist. They think we're living in the end times based on what they're reading in the Bible. And they think that what John was saying is related to what's going on today, which in some truth it is, but it's important to look at Revelations perhaps from a different perspective to help give you understanding of what perhaps was really meant to be written in there. And it's not only about the Antichrist, but it's just also about what he was seeing and writing down. So first and foremost, what was written in Revelation is predominantly symbolic. And what was written down, and because of the vision that he had about the future, a lot of it has already come to pass. And is coming to pass, but it's not what people are thinking. And just how anything is, when it comes to the Bible or the Quran or the Bhagavad Gita or just someone who has a higher spiritual sense or what we think of God to be and all that kind of stuff, it goes back to what Maitreya said. Now, I know Maitreya is a new name for you. You said you just heard his name just a week ago, and then you're doing your research, which is great, right? I completely respect that. But what Maitreya said years ago about this very thing is he said, As man so relates to man, does man relate to God? And really what that means is, if you are trying to figure out what he meant by that, is as we are conditioned, as we believe is how we see God. So if you're a critical person, your God is critical. If you're a capitalist, your God is a capitalist. If you're someone who wants to see justice and peace in the world like me, well, your God's going to want that too. So I'm not immune to this at all. But as we relate to man, as how we relate to God. And the important reason why Maitreya's biggest priority is the principle of sharing is that will bring about unity within the world, to bring about trust and justice, which will eventually help us have a different perspective of God, which is what we really should be seeing God to be, which is beyond ideologies and that kind of thing. So that's why it's important for us to manifest these things, to do these things, to create justice in the world, create peace and those kind of things. So it directly relates to how we see our own divinity and how we relate to God. But the Antichrist, and this is my point about Revelation, is if you look at Revelation through the eyes of fear, you will be nothing. It will do nothing but reinforce that fear, for sure. And then if you start to try to relate it to what's going on today, you'll start to see and try to figure out and kind of really, in a way, manipulate what's going on to kind of relate it back to Revelation. And so, but if you look at Revelation for what I think it should have been looked at, the way that he was writing it, it's actually the most hopeful book in the Bible, because it is about the coming together of humanity at some point. The New Jerusalem, which is not about a city in Israel, it's about the coming time of peace on earth, the coming together of peace in that way. But all the stuff that he talked about was mainly symbolic, including the Antichrist. So the Antichrist is not an individual and was never meant to be seen as an individual, although that's what most people, of course, see the Antichrist as. The Antichrist is an energy. It's nefarious, it's nasty, it's brutal, it's destructive, it's something you don't want to be standing in front of when it's released, for sure, because it does not care who and what you are. It's going to destroy you along with everything else. But it destroys the old ways of thinking and relating to allow a new way of thinking and relating to occur. It's directly related to the forces of materiality or the forces of involution or the forces of evil, whatever name you want to assign them. It is related to that. But they do have just as they have a purpose and a function in the world, so does the Antichrist energy have a purpose and a function in the world too. It destroys the old ways of thinking and relating to allow a new way of thinking and relating to occur, is really what it is. So it was first released during the time of John writing it when he was in exile, but it was written about Nero. Nero is actually the first individual that this energy was released through. And it, because of that energy, destroyed the Roman dispensation, and it allowed Christianity to flourish. And after it did its work, the people of the time, humanity of the time, started to see and relate to each other differently than they did prior to that time. Now, it was more of a regional thing versus a global thing, I think, because the world was not interconnected as it is today. But then it again was re-released through the time of World War I and World War II with the Axis powers. The Nazis in Germany, fascists in Italy, militarists in Japan, they created a group that energy was released through. And through that created that same destruction that allowed a new way of thinking and relating to occur. So it is true to say that we relate to each other and ourselves and put ourselves in the universe far differently than we do and did just 100 years ago. And we're still feeling the effects of the Antichrist energy today, and it will continue to reshape and the way we think and the way we relate to one another over the coming time. But that's the purpose and function of the Antichrist. And those people, such as yourself, and I'm just saying this to help you out, that spend all this time trying to research the Antichrist to try to find it, are literally wasting their time, because it's already done, gone, kaput, over. Dust your hands off. We don't need to be looking for it anymore. And it won't be re-released until another 3,000 years from now. That's why it says in the Bible, The beast will be chained back for a time and a half. It was talking about during the time of Aquarius, which talked about a relative peace, not a relative peace for just a few years, but the relative peace based on what human history has seen. The coming time over the next 2,000 years, there will be a relative peace. And then after, there's 3,000 years from now, after we've all left the earth and come back many, many times in our reincarnational cycles, eventually it will be re-released again during the middle of the time of Capricorn. And that will be the last time it's ever released because we won't need it anymore. And then the influence of the forces of darkness will have done its work, but no longer influencing humanity at all. We will be totally free from that type of influence. So, but again, and I'm just saying this to help you out, just as anybody else that's going around looking for the Antichrist and the internet, they're always somebody that is different than who we are. God is always somebody that's the same as we are. The Antichrist is always somebody that's different, always. You'll never see somebody that says the Antichrist is exactly like them. Never going to happen, right? There is somebody that I listen to quite a bit for research purposes, but I also find him entertaining. He's totally convinced that Donald Trump is the Antichrist. Do you think he voted for Donald Trump? Do you think that he wears a MAGA hat everywhere he goes? Do you think that he goes to Trump rallies because he's supporting Trump but yet thinks he's the Antichrist? Of course not. Those people who thought Barack Obama was the Antichrist while he was in office, who no longer talk about him being the Antichrist because really Barack Obama's really not in office anymore, right? I bet you they voted Republican. They weren't progressives. You know what I'm saying? So it's always somebody different. But the gods that we worship, and this is something that Krishnamurti, the question that he posed in one of the videos that I listened to, he said, really, who created whom? Did God create man or did we create God? And what he was talking about, yes, there is a creator that created all this that we see and feel and touch and move and have our being, but the belief systems that we created, the belief in that God is all coming from us. It's all coming from who and what we see ourselves to be. As man so relates to man, does man relate to God. It's a truism. It's as mutable as gravity, for sure. But again, do your research on the Antichrist, and I'm glad it brought you to this channel. Hopefully you'll stick around. Hopefully you'll comment some more and so forth. And hopefully you'll see that I'm just trying to help you and trying to keep you from wasting time looking for something that's already happened. But, again, do your research. Look into it. But thank you very much for the comment, nonetheless, whoever this was that commented. All right, next one comes from Mark Hill. I ordered and received my copy of A Master Speaks Volume 2 yesterday. I was just reading these first articles from 2004 this morning and was sort of blown away by how it seems like it could have been written for today. Amazing. Yeah, that was the exact impression I got from reading them. We are still grappling with the same problems that the Bush administration were doing during their time. We haven't moved past it. Part of it is because the same energy that was influencing the Bush administration is what's behind and influencing and giving strength to the Trump administration and to Trump himself, which is why people back even then saw and put Bush up on this pedestal when they really shouldn't have, just as they're doing today with Trump, for sure, right? And then if you look at what's going on with these wars and how we're having to continue to deal with the wars in the Middle East and in Eastern Europe and the genocides in Israel and so forth, yeah, we haven't pushed past any of this stuff yet. Now, the thing that also, too, that I found in Maitreya's mission, or I'm sorry, in Master Speaks Volume 2, was an article that he wrote called A Call to the Media. And it was written in 2007, and it was about people's perspective on the emergence of Maitreya, how they don't know if it's real or not, and how that relates to what the media knows and all that kind of stuff. And what I remember reading it back around the time that he published it in, it was published in Share International, but it really hit home when Benjamin Creme made the announcement that Maitreya had already given an interview on TV. And if you were around back then, that knew this information as I did, was a part of the Share International group, you can really, you would, I'm sure, see it the same way. But I was blown away by how many people that were in the media were talking about Maitreya. And it was like they already knew a lot about this information, but yet weren't saying it. I was shocked. And they, of course, were looking for anybody that could possibly fit the bill. And, of course, they settled in on Raj Patel, and it created a whole mess. And Benjamin Crumb had to come out and make an announcement that it wasn't Raj Patel, because Raj Patel was saying all along he wasn't Maitreya, and so forth and so forth. But I remember somebody in particular, Steve Colbert, who I really don't particularly find that funny, but he's fairly popular, I guess, on late night talk shows and so forth. And he was making it sound like he even knew who Maitreya was, because he was ridiculing Ben about it. As my family used to always say, eventually he'll have to eat some humble pie over this, because he will see, just as everybody else sees, they will eventually see, is that Maitreya is actually real. He's just not Raj Patel, So, but I was blown away. But this is the article that I want to read, and it really, hopefully, it will give you some encouragement if you're somebody who's starting to believe this information, but perhaps don't know what, are kind of doubting whether it's true or not or whatever, or perhaps if you've followed this information for years and you're wondering if there's any truth to this because you still haven't seen and recognized Maitreya on TV. But this is something coming from Benjamin Crumb's master. Like I said, this was written about 3 years, actually about 2 years before he actually did his interview. For many years, men have awaited impatiently to be sure evidence that Maitreya does in truth exist and carries out his work among us. Why this doubt should for so long persist is perhaps difficult to understand, given the vast transformations of our world, which have clearly taken place, each one foretold by Maitreya, and made available to the public and world media. What prevents the acceptance, even as a hypothesis, that such a welcome event has indeed transpired? The media of the world know every facet of this information. However, little they inform the public of its nature. Many of its representatives have met Maitreya, have heard him speak, and yet stay silent themselves. Why should this be so? What inhibits the public announcement of this welcome news? In the main, the problem is fear. Fear of ridicule, fear of disbelief, fear of loss of their status or jobs, fear that they are somehow beguiled, that they did not see what they saw or hear what they heard. It is easier to set their experiences aside, and to leave it to Maitreya himself, if he does indeed exist, to come forward and show the world his factual presence. So, anyway, the one thing that he did say when all the media were trying to find Maitreya, where people, even after being told by Benjamin Crumb not to search for Maitreya in the media and on the internet and so forth, he did say that this was an indication, this was a sign that humanity is ready for the teacher. More people know about Maitreya than are letting on, for sure. And when the time comes, when Maitreya is out known for who he is, will say that they knew it all along. Some will, just like the politicians that go along with everything Trump says now, once they get out of office, they want to be seen as heroes, that they were brave enough to stand up against him now that they're not in office anymore. It'll be kind of the same thing. There'll be people in the media, I'm sure, that will say, I knew this all along. Well, why didn't you say anything about it? You know what I'm saying? So we'll see. Time will tell. But anyway, thank you very much for the comment, Mark. And I'm glad that you're reading Benjamin Crumb's master's articles, for sure. And again, I encourage everyone to read his articles too, because they're very informative. They're very insightful. And they are definitely a reminder of just how things have not changed in the last 20 years or so. But, all right, so moving on. So this is coming from an email. Can I ask you a question? Absolutely, you can ask a question. I encourage questions for sure. What do you think about people like Professor Jeffrey Sachs, Professor John, and I'm going to butcher this dude's name, Mearsheimer? I'm sorry. For example, I sometimes listen to quite a lot of videos of them. I also listen to Colonel McGregor, Judge Napolitano, and Alexander, and Alex Christopher. Why couldn't you find people to listen to named John Smith? I'm kidding. Anyway, I think that these people are some kind of diplomats and not so much driven by ideologies as most of the others. They want to cooperate, not compete. They want peace as well. Don't you think that some of them could be influenced by Maitreya? I would like to hear your opinion in regards to the esoteric point of view. which esoteric just means that which is hidden, which I don't know how esoteric my view is, because we're talking about it in the public sphere of things. But anyway, I knew of some of these people. I've listened to some of these people in the past, and I didn't, I don't listen to them all the time, and that kind of thing. I'm going to start by saying this, and this goes for really anything. Even when I talk about Trump, it's really not for me to say what you should believe in somebody or whether what they're saying is true or not. It's for each and every one of us, and even when it comes to what I have to say, to believe it or not based on us. We're all grown-ups here. We can all figure it out on our own. I know that's not what you're asking, but I just wanted to make that clear. I don't see myself as an authority to be able to say this person is, yes, he's got it, and this one doesn't, and when Maitreya is out known for who he is, or not known for who he is, but when he's out more known and people are starting to suspect that might be Maitreya, it's not my place to point out that person's Maitreya and you got it wrong over there and yes, you got it right, and that kind of thing. It's for each and every one of us to decide these things and see these things for ourselves. Now, these people aren't alone in this assessment of it, and it's not a criticism, it's just, I think the way it is, they remind me of my own employees on my job. They bring me their problems all the time. They bring me problems of the company I work for all the time. And they're just bringing me problems. And a lot of times when I get fed up with it, I might say, what's the solution? And they don't have a solution. They're just telling me the problems because they think that that's what they're supposed to do. So I didn't, you might have heard them give solutions and I didn't take the time to listen to all the videos, and that's not, so I apologize if that's the case, but it's not just them, it's other people that even I listen to. They're very aware of the problems. They're telling us what the problems are. They're shining light on the problems, but none of them are really giving any solutions. Now, are they? When in actuality, and frankly, to be honest, we really all know the problems. I don't need somebody telling me what the problems are. They might know a page and a half more of what's going on in the military and how it relates to what's going on in Israel. And this guy, Jeffrey Sachs, might know a little bit more about trade and economics than I do. But at the end of the day, does it really matter? The problem is we're living in a very divided world. The problem is that there's a genocide in Israel. The problem is that our country is doing a lot of nefarious things to try to stay on top of the geopolitical heap, and there's a lot of tension and there's a lot of stress, and the environment is breaking down, and there's hunger and everywhere, and all this stress and all these problems and all the pollution problems are all causing us to get sick. I mean, that's really the amount of it. But what is the solution? I just told you the problems just like everybody else did, right? It's pretty easy. I'm sure you knew the problems very well, right? The solution is sharing. It's not what most people would think is the solution, but that is how simple it is. Maitreya says, without sharing, there will be no justice. Without justice, there will be no peace. And without peace, there will be no future. If these people are, influence is really not the right word, I think, but are they inspired by Maitreya or one of these masters to go out on TV and say what they say to shed light on it? I don't know. I mean, that's for each, time will tell, right? Or are they just doing it because they're trying to get their name out there? Or both, or a combination thereof, I don't know, But none of them are speaking the solution, because we're still in the problems. We still have the problems that we have. And it won't really be, I think, until Maitreya is starting to be recognized as Maitreya, until we start to really take him seriously and start to look at it. And he might be the first one on the world stage to really bring the idea and the truth about sharing to the public. You can talk about corruption in government, but corruption in government is still going to be going on when we try the principle of sharing, for sure. It won't be until the principle of sharing starts that corruption will start to lessen and eventually become not a problem. The political divisions, the left versus right political systems that we have, will still be in place when we try the principle of sharing, but will start to lessen after we try it. Hunger will still be in place when we try the principle of sharing, but it won't end until we try the principle of sharing. The environment will still be polluted and still sick, and will still be getting us all sick until we try the principle of sharing, and then we can do something about it. I think the environmental problem is probably the simplest and easiest thing to solve. But it will take countries working together in order to solve it. Just look what happened when COVID came around, and we did the lockdowns for just a few weeks, how clean the environment got and how quickly it got. It was amazing. But when we try the principle of sharing and see that that works. And then Maitreya suggests, okay, let's shut down all the nuclear reactors because that invisible peril is what's making us all sick. Well, then we'll listen to them. We'll trust them a little bit more, perhaps, or whatever like that. Does that make sense? So, the problems that we are facing today are real. But the masters will say, though, the number one priority is that everyone should be fed in a world of plenty. That should be the first priority that we fix. When we do that, all the other things will just fall away. All the other problems will just fall away. Genocides in other countries will just fall away. Tensions between countries will just magically disappear. It will go away like a miracle because we will start to trust one another. And then we can listen to Maitreya and hear what he has to say about other things. But it won't happen until then. The one thing that I would say, not everybody is going to be talking about the priorities of the teacher. The need for peace, the need to bring about justice, the need for sharing, the need to end the environment. But some people are, right? Anytime somebody is talking about one of those things, they are inspired by one of these masters, whether they realize it or not. Most of the time, they have no idea who these masters are. Somebody like Greta Thunberg, who is very vocal about the environment, probably is inspired by one of these masters to do what she does with the conviction that she has and the passion that she has for the environment. But then there might be an artist that doesn't talk about any of that stuff that is also inspired by one of these masters because their job is different than hers. You know what I mean? So it might be, but I would say in the public sphere, with political pundits, with economic pundits, with pundits talking about justice, if they start to talk about some of the priorities of the teacher, listen to see what they have to say about it. They might be somebody who is inspired by one of these masters. But right now, it's kind of hard-pressed to find anybody that is talking about the priorities of the teacher. Like I said, they're just talking about the problems, and they're getting their face out there, and they're getting their name known, and so forth. But are they really offering any real solutions to the problem, I guess, is the question that I would ask myself, right? But the other thing I wanted to say, too, and this is more for the person who wrote the email, but it's also for anybody who really understands and starting to believe this information on whatever level it is believe it or not, and like I said, this is for the person who wrote the email, probably know more about the solution to the problems that they're talking about than they do. And yet, you listen to them. And there's nothing wrong with listening to people like that. I listen to people like that all the time. But we shouldn't look up to them. We shouldn't respect what they have to say just because that's who they are. Maitreya says, don't follow anyone. Don't even follow him. But like I said, you know more about the solution to the problems because I know you know about the principle of sharing because you listen to these videos and you've commented on those things. You're very concerned about the environment, right? But if you're somebody who hears these videos and perhaps isn't that interested in Maitreya as I talk about, that's fine. Study and learn more about the Marshall Plan. Did it bring about justice and goodwill amongst the nations that participated in it? What was the Marshall Plan? You can go back that far. Well, I don't know anything about the Marshall Plan. Well, according to the masters, it was the first time that the United States tried the principle of sharing amongst nations. We gave accesses of resources to those countries to rebuild their countries, to rebuild their infrastructure, to help stabilize the political situation in Europe right after World War II. We did it, and it worked. They gave back in payment what they took. And then we gave a little bit more to them, and they gave back in payment what they took. And it unfortunately only lasted a few years. Unfortunately only took place amongst a few nations, but the United States has never invaded Britain. Britain has never lobbed a few missiles toward Berlin. Berlin has never tried to retake over France or Poland or whatever like this because those nations participated in the Marshall Plan. The people of those nations trust one another now where they perhaps didn't before, and so forth and so forth. We perhaps don't hate them anymore like we probably did when we were engaged in a conflict with them and so forth. It was miraculous. Unfortunately, we never tried it, right? The problem is, and this is ultimately the problem, and hopefully you'll take this the right way as it's meant to be taken. The problem is that we, as a people that know the solutions, don't have the courage to speak out. And we let those people who we assume know the answers do all the talking, when we probably have more of the answers than they do. Maitreya says that the people of the world are far wiser than the political leaders that we put into office. We know more of the solutions than they do. You know what I'm saying? Well, why are we not the ones talking? Why are we the ones not asserting our voice? Why are we the ones not offering solutions to the problems? And it's because of fear. It's because we're afraid of being ridiculed. It's because we're afraid that because we don't have the credentials that this other person has, it doesn't give us the right to speak on a topic. Doesn't mean you have to go pretend like you know everything about it, but if you know a little bit about the principle of sharing, talk about it with people. Everybody's talking about the problems. I mean, I can't go a day without somebody bringing up the problems in the world, whether it's political, economic, or military, or geopolitical, or whatever, the environmental problem, right? I'm sure you're probably having the same experience yourself. Talk to people, say, hey, you know what? Have you thought about this? That this could bring about cooperation amongst nations so we could solve the problems. But I don't think it's going to start until Maitreya is out known for who he is, because he will show us just how important it is for us to try the principle of sharing. But by talking about it now, you would start to create a little bit of awareness amongst your circle, your friends, your family, your coworkers, or whatever, about how important the principle of sharing is. So then when they do hear someone who they might possibly think is Maitreya, they might not have any idea who Maitreya is, doesn't matter, it will make a little bit more sense to them. They might listen to him with a little bit more open mind. It might open their heart to what he's saying a little bit more, or so forth, or so forth. It's been said, too, that if you talk about and you share the truth about who and what Maitreya is with people, then that person, Maitreya, can enter their lives without infringing their free will. How cool is that? So we all have a hand to play in the transformation of this world. That's what Maitreya and Ben's Master have been talking about. And Ben's Master talks about it in almost every article, about how important it is for all of us to take share in what we're in the transformation of this planet. And why wait for Maitreya to come out and be known for who he is before you start? You might as well start now. It's not going to be long before we see Maitreya and recognize him on TV. Not long at all. It could be any moment. So let go of that fear that you're not good enough to be able to speak out just as these people speak out. And talk about just how important the principle of sharing is. The need for justice, the need for peace, the time to quit addressing the problems. We're all stocked up here. We all know what the problems are. Let's start talking about the solutions. Let's talk about how unified we really could be if we just try the principle of sharing. All the signs that I've talked about over the years, the miraculous signs, the crosses of light, weeping icons, the experiences that I've had with Maitreya and other people have had with Maitreya, these masters, or angel sightings, or being healed, or being saved from an accident, or UFO sightings, they're all fine and wonderful. But the fact that, just for myself personally, I'm starting to see that people who I disagreed with just a few months ago were all along wanting what I and Maitreya were wanting, and other people of like mind were wanting, which is peace. That perhaps we're not so different after all. Even though ideologically I totally disagree with what they believe in, what they stand in. But that one thing, which is the most important thing, the need for peace, we are on the same page. So then the ideological differences mean nothing. And to me, that is a wondrous sign. Those who search for signs will find them. I would take that sign over seeing a UFO every day of my life over the last 10 years. Or seeing Maitreya every single day in my life. I would take that over any of those other experiences that I had with Maitreya. In a heartbeat, I would take any of that, because this is what I've been waiting for. This is what I've been longing to see, is people wanting peace, talking about peace, how important it is. They want it. So do I. So does Maitreya. Hopefully you do too. I love you guys very much. Thank you very much for the comments and the questions. And as always, I look forward to putting up videos in the very near future. Take care till then. See you soon. Bye. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.